Hello, this is Vincent, and welcome to Dogma Discussions. I have another story for you about the dogma of testing God. But do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the notification bell. That way you'll know when I put out new videos. And put a comment below, and I have a question for you, or a couple actually, for you to answer in the comments. So I look forward to reading your comments. Okay, here we go. Have you ever heard of the dogma of testing God? Is it possible for a human being to do something so egregious that God becomes fed up with you? Like we all have an opportunity for a good life, but if you test God's patience, you might be punished or even die early. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus says explicitly not to put God to the test. But what does that mean, really? In the Christian churches with which I have been associated, testing God is going against His will or taking unnecessary risks and expecting Him to protect you. Oh, okay, but what if someone is just living life and not intentionally testing Him? Human beings are generally risk-averse and comfort-seeking. So, if someone does something that might be deemed as dangerous, are they really testing God? In my experience, it's not that simple. People have a variety of reasons for taking risks, and they have nothing to do with testing God. Years ago, I was invited on a weekend trip with a group of friends. After a long day of hiking, we reached the summit of a 14,000-foot peak. Let me take you to that moment. We sit atop the mountain, only the four of us. The top of the peak is flat, about a 10-foot square and edged by a rock rim, about 4 inches wide and 6 inches high. Small strips of clouds wisp by as light breezes move them just above our heads. The views are breathtaking. In every direction there is a continuous series of mountains as far as one can see. Marmots hang out with us, barking for food. If you've never seen one, marmots look like groundhogs, but when they walk, their fluffy tails spin around in a circle. It's the coolest thing. Anyway, exuberant about our feat, we eat, laugh, celebrate our success. Suddenly, in the middle of lunch, one of our group rises, walks to the ledge, steps up on it, and putting his arms out to the sides, stands like the Christ of Rio de Janeiro. The rest of us stare in disbelief as he balances on the edge of a 1,000-foot drop. Small clouds streak by, directed by short blasts of wind. I hold my breath every time I feel the air move around us. One gust in the wrong direction and so long, my friend. It seems like an eternity before he steps down. When he does, there is no fanfare. He merely returns to our circle and resumes eating. So, why did he do it? He told me later that was his way of confronting his fear of heights and learning more about himself in the process. Not testing God. Hell, he's not even religious. Yet, even if you are religious, doing the right thing all the time is boring. And there are a lot of rules to follow. So what constitutes openly defying God? In my family's church, it was to drink, smoke, and fornicate. If someone in the church was living that way and something bad happened to them, aha, belief confirmed. Yes, God punished them, the devout would say. Yet, is it really that simple? Carol was one of the flock I remember who did these things. She was a wonderful, giving, caring person, and she broke all 3 of those rules regularly. The faithful used to whisper behind her back that she knew it was wrong to live that way and was testing God to punish her, or worse. Yet I knew Carol, and she wasn't intending to test God. In fact, she lived in fear of being punished, but hoped that God knew her heart and understood that she meant no disrespect. She had experienced some tough times and merely wanted to enjoy life. And those quote unquote sinful behaviors made her feel happy and alive. Yet what about those Christians who indulge in risky behavior because of faith? Is that testing God? Mark's gospel says that there will be certain signs accompanying believers, that they will cast out demons. Not really provable. Next, that they will speak in tongues. Yeah, I went to a church once where that occurred. I think it was hyperbole. Next, that they will pick up serpents and not be harmed. Whoa, okay, hold on, cowboy. Now we're entering some weird territory. Yet, there are Christians who handle live, venomous snakes in church. They even sing and dance while holding them. Why would anyone do that? Having run into poisonous snakes in the wild, I have never had the desire to hang around one for very long. Yet, in the United States, there are over 100 churches in which snake handling is a part of their religious practice. Supposedly, this is one way to show their faith in God, that He will protect them from harm. And does the Almighty protect them? Not always. A pastor died in 2014 from being bitten by a rattlesnake. Well, actually, he died because after being bitten, he and his wife refused medical care for him. In 2012, another snake handling pastor died from being bitten. He also refused medical treatment, leaving his survival up to God. And should I be surprised that his own father, the same kind of pastor, had died by snake bite about 30 years earlier? It seems like a strange act of faith. After the first person dies doing it, you would think that the others would get the hint. Yet, testing God? No. I think that there is a more human explanation for the behavior. It's the desire to be noticed for doing something that most people won't do. And when you're noticed for taking risks, there is often the reward of status, in this case, in your church. It is in the Bible, after all. So is the exhortation to spread the gospel. I once knew a good Christian woman named Sally, whose life consisted of being a wife and stay-at-home mom to her 2 children. Her entire life revolved around the family, and that's all she talked about, besides Jesus. Her husband was a successful accountant. They were both very devout. They regularly attended church and held Bible studies in their home. They were the poster children for a happy, God-fearing couple. At one point, though, the wife started talking about wanting to do more with her life. More for God. About that time, a missionary group came to the church and spoke about sneaking Bibles into foreign countries, ones ruled by governments that regularly jailed people for doing so. Sally was hooked. She felt that it must be God's will that the missionaries came to her church. But considering the great risk, was she testing God? Her husband and the children did not want her to, but she wanted to. So she did. In the weeks preceding the trip, her family grew tense. She, purposeful and excited. When she left, her husband was worried. Her children, 6 and 4 years old at the time, inconsolable. But Sally, she smiled as she kissed them goodbye at the airport, resolute in her mission. After a couple of angst-ridden weeks for her family, for there was no contact with her during this time, she returned, exuberant, walking on cloud 9. When she came to church, she was so excited to tell about her adventure. It seemed to me, an objective observer, that Sally wasn't testing God. She was seeking a break from her mundane existence, longing for something to talk about that was hers. In the song Jack and Diane, John Mellencamp sings that life goes on long after the thrill of living is gone. That seems to have been the situation with Sally and Carol. An emptiness, a monotony, boredom with the tediousness of everyday living. For my hiking buddy, it came down to improving himself. To be sure, his approach would be extreme for most people, but it worked for him. Regarding the snake handlers, I am not doubting their faith. Faith can cause people to do extreme things. Yet, from my point of view, there is an element of status that accompanies the behavior. One of the ministers who died from snake handling was even featured on a TV show. Sharing the faith? Perhaps. It also gets you noticed, doesn't it? Yet, is this really testing God? How can it be when the snake handlers are following the Bible? So why the dogma about testing God? When I was growing up, it was used as a means of controlling the behavior of members. And fear is a useful tool to submit people. But we don't need it. We should be aware of the risks we take and why, and then accept the consequences. This dogma is dangerous because it seeks to label you, to define your behavior within a narrow scope. It takes away your individuality and freedom of thought. And that is definitely something to be avoided. That's the end of my story. Thank you for listening. Hit the like button, subscribe. And okay, now I have questions for you. Please answer them in the comments. First of all, what's the most extreme thing you've known someone to do because of faith? What is the most extreme thing you've known someone to do because of faith? Secondly, are you worried about testing God? Is this something you've been raised with? Something you're struggling with? Something you've overcome? Talk to me. Tell me in the comments. I look forward to reading them. Thank you. Until next time, this is Vincent.